Bill Cosby did an interview with Playboy magazine. I think this was back in 68 or 69. And this was like around the time where you had some of these women said that Bill Cosby drugged them up or whatever. And he said in this interview that he did with Playboy magazine, he said, and I'm just going to elaborate on what he said and paraphrase whatever. He says, look, you know, a man cannot demand a kid's respect. He cannot demand a woman's respect if he doesn't have no game going on for himself, if he doesn't have no money, if he doesn't have any type of decent income. Kids wake up in the middle of the night listening to this woman chew him out and cuss him out because he's not making no money. If your woman makes more money than you do, or if your kids make more money than you do, you ain't calling no shots. You just some dude who can beat their ass because you're bigger and stronger than they are. But that doesn't mean that you're the type of person who they can say, hey, I want to grow up to be like him. So in other words, you're just another nigga with an attitude. And this also explains why you have a lot of women who choose so-called thugs, alphas, whatever you want to call them. And why you do have some fathers who are in some young men's lives, and these young men don't even respect their own fathers. They say, oh, my daddy a bitch. I'd rather be like Ray Ray and Pookie. They get more ass than my daddy. They got more balls than my daddy. They got more heart than my daddy, even if he is in and out of jail. When it comes to having a family, you have to have money and resource in order to provide for a family. I mean, it's hard enough being on your own. Hell, I'm on my own. I've never been married. I've never had no kids, and I have absolutely no interest. I'm listening to Tariq Nasheed's video about bed bugs, and he thought that it was weird that a guy like Jesse Lee Peterson would be 70 and never been married, never had no kids. That's not weird. It's a choice, and people don't understand that. If you want to, a lot of guys talk about how there should be return to 1950s and traditional marriage, and that's not happening. And even if you brought it back, a person has the right to accept it or reject it. Because even back then, even back in the 70s, you had a lot of men out here who didn't have no life outside of his role of trying to provide for his family. And a lot of men based their whole entire self-worth based on that. And a lot of men were stupid enough to believe that they were going to be rewarded for that in their old age. But you go to a retirement home right now, take a look at all of the lonely old men who did everything right. Take a look at all of these lonely young men who are in their 20s and 30s. They spend all their time on the internet and they did everything right, and they still got played, and they still can't get what the fuck they want. So my last two videos that I made, I talked about black respectability and the failure of that, and my contempt for older blacks and all this nation building rhetoric. And I basically said that society and civilization has no right to exist if it's dependent on people being slaves to it. After the civil rights movement, you had starting in the 70s, you had blaxploitation flicks, but then you had a lot of African American TV shows that talked about black families being moral and upright and polished and having some type of sense of strict infallibility. And that epidemic improved or worst based on your perspective. As the 1980s came about, you had the Cosby Show, and then you had A Different World. And the producers of those television shows, Bill Cosby included, they had this ulterior motive of changing white perception of black life and black family life. And it's a certain type of stupidity to me that certain black people still wish to live by. And this is brilliantly depicted in a television show called Good Times, which lasted for 6 seasons, from 74 to 79. Good Times is a television show about black ghetto family life. And it's a very good show. I'm not talking down on the show at all. I'm not talking down on the show at all. But, you know, while it was a good television show, it has its problems. Now, first example is a guy named James Evans, who's played by John Amos. And he's an honest, but he's an easily cantankerous father. And he, you know, every time you see him, he's always looking like he's getting ready to blow up and just go the fuck off on someone. All right. And he has difficulties keeping a cool head and holding down jobs, and he's going from job to job to job, and it's really fucking with him that he cannot really provide for his family the way that he wants. And one reason why he cannot provide for his family the way that he wants is because of these fake ass religious morals that has been bestowed upon the family by the wife, Florida Evans, played by Esther Roll. So now this guy has a slightly overweight wife, and he got 3 kids, 2 of which are damn near grown. Even though James Evans, he's a very good father, he's nothing more than a beast of burden and a tool and authority figure. He does love his family, of course, as he should. But he has a persistent difficulty of trying to provide for them because, again, he's going from job to job to job. And again, part of this is the fault of the wife. And the wife is a restrained woman. Florida Evans, she has this devotion to Jesus, or white Jesus. There was an episode where they tried to take down this picture of white Jesus from off the wall and replace it with a black Jesus. And she had a problem with it. There was another episode where he was about to play pool because they were going to get evicted the next day. And she's saying, James, the Lord don't want you shooting no pool. Just pray. And because of that, it costed James and even the kids, it costed them a lot of golden opportunities, and it took them so long to get out of the ghetto, and they became a bunch of late bloomers in life. Here's the second thing. Florida Evans, her belief in her belief in the Lord and white Jesus, directly or indirectly, that's what sent James to an early grave. Because remember, at the beginning of season 4, he got killed in a car accident. When John Amos really left the show, because he got sick and tired of JJ's. The JJ character is played by Jimmy Walker, and JJ is James Jr., James Evans' older son. He got sick and tired of seeing Jimmy Walker shucking and jiving, and so he left. He just got fed up with that. But if you follow the storyline, his wife, Florida Evans, her belief in the Lord is what sent him to an early grave. Because she believed, you got to do it the right way. And he found himself a decent job, but it was in another state, and he got into a car accident. And it just made things very complicated. But even with the death of her husband, she still could not drop that spirituality and all that matriarchal given to the Lord bullshit. So, James Evans was a patriarch, and now, after he got killed off, now Florida Evans is now the matriarch. And she made things very difficult with all that morals and conservative religious bullshit. And it doesn't matter if it was marriage, morality, Bible quotes, law-abiding shit. She unconsciously catered to the demise of her own husband. All right. And there were a lot of rare opportunities to create a better tomorrow for the family, and it was ignored. And it was frowned upon. It doesn't matter if it was shooting pool, JJ running numbers, James Evans trying to keep lost money aside and trying to move their family out of the ghetto, and she told him to do the right thing and return the money, or the adult children trying to shack up with different mates or sex partners, especially Thelma. And it's a prime example of how this good versus evil dichotomy, it fucks us up. Especially when you have tyrants and governments and people who are in power, the elites at the top. They dictate and influence how people live their personal lives. Regardless of the fact that the government is more richer than any man, they want to, feed religion off on you to try to keep you submissive and quiet. Or to keep all of the money flowing into their hands. Meanwhile, the rich get richer, the poor don't get shit. It also shows us how women are the biggest regurgitators of a lot of these fairy tales. I don't care if it's religion, or Christianity, which is actually the most female oriented religion out there. All right. So Good Times portrayed this wholesome, perfect black family. Okay. Because they had a sense of unity, because the father was in the house. Okay. But a lot of people refuse to see past that. They say, okay, you know what? At least they got a father in the home. At least they come from a 2-parent household. But like any other family, I don't care if they're broke, ghetto, or middle class, suburbanite family. Every family is dysfunctional. And Advocatus Diaboli, I know I mentioned him a lot. He made a topic about The Simpsons. You know, they live in the middle class, and regardless of how perfect things might seem, because you got Homer and you have Marge, but they're still pretty screwed up family, and they're still pretty dysfunctional. Well, Good Times is no different. What did James Evans actually teach his kids, other than being broke, or having a short fuse, or being a success object? And then we have to ask ourselves questions like, why is it that people are having kids that they cannot afford, especially in the black community? And why do you have middle class families who are having all of these kids in a recession, whether they know or not that for every child you bring into the world is going to cost you about $250,000? A lot of people are becoming aware in today's generation that having kids is very complicated, which explains why you have a lot of people who are just not interested in having them. Nobody thinks about the cost of, the high cost of family formation and possible breakdown, and the fact that in life shit happens beyond our control. People get married, they get into relationships, kids or no kids, they step out, shit happens. People get bored, they get fed up. Why do people have children when the odds are against them, thanks to sexism, institutional racism, or recession in the country? I mean, are people that desperate for love or trying to ensure the survival of the species? It's not like you're going to live long enough to see it anyway, and the James Evans character is a prime example of that, and James Evans couldn't take none of that with him. And this caused the family to struggle a whole lot harder under Florida Evans' matriarchal rule, and again, her obsession with doing things the right way and the moral way, and everything always has to be right according to the Bible, or according to a conservative meme, however you call it. And there's James Evans, the older son. He's a complete fucking buffoon, regardless of the fact that he's a player and he's a womanizer. And he has a love for art. Okay? We expect Thelma Evans, the daughter, the only daughter, to become to just be completely stupid when it comes to the concept of love and romance, and how desperate she is to find a guy, and how she's so quick to fall in love with a person she falls in love too easily. Today's generation of women are very lackadaisical about love. Some women want love, some women just want to fuck, just like guys do. So, but even that's facilitated by spirituality and, Calvinism, conservatism, which is responsible for a lot of social ills and how it can mess up people's personal lives. And because of what society tells us what love should be this way and that way, and trying to continue traditional gender roles. Then you got Michael Evans, the younger of the three children, the youngest son, who nobody really cares about. He never really grew up, and nobody really cared about him. And his relevance was the same as that of Bookman, the maintenance man of the apartment building in this Chicago apartment complex the family lived in. All right. Michael Evans never really grew up in the eyes of his siblings and his mother and the audience. And he will always be just that little boy. And the message is very clear about how nothing's perfect. All right. Doesn't matter if it's patriarchy, matriarchy. Whenever you have a family structure, the king or the queen, everybody thinks it's all about them. And then again, the ultimate goal is to be able to provide for your family. And if you cannot provide for your family, you're nothing, and it's just a futile attempt to try to paint this picture of a perfect family, of a perfect world, to try to brainwash people that that's the ultimate goal of human existence that everybody should have. And believe it or not, yes, there's a lot of people in today's generation who want to return to that, and who want to have that fake, perfect, good times family portrait. Whether it's for their own gratificational purposes, because they're scared of being lonely, or because they want to impress people who don't matter or who don't really care. And then some conservative will sit up and tell you, Afrocentrics believe the same shit, white supremacists believe the same thing, or because they believe that, marriage is the building block for civilization. And as a result, you have a lot of people who become slaves to morality. And they'll say that marriage is the foundation for building civilization, when it's really just a social conditioning created by governments to keep stupid people, quote unquote, in their place. But if you take a look at a matriarchal community, women are taught to be strong and independent, while their sons are taught to be chivalrous, sexless tricks, and emasculated circus show clown freaks. And then you have some patriarchal families who have this notion of, oh, well, the father is the primary decision maker, not just for himself, but for everybody else's individual preferences and tastes. So you're not going to hang around these group of people. I'm going to find you a husband. I'm going to find you a wife, and this and that. And it just makes things complicated. And a lot of men have been sent to an early grave because of that way of thinking alone. But however, you still got a lot of people who are stupid enough to want to go back to that, or who want to have that. But even in in new television shows, like let's say Empire, same thing. But you have more realistic television shows about black families, like The Wire and Power, and even to some degree Empire too is more realistic. Yeah, those television shows are about black families, but they are very realistic, and everybody in those television shows are flawed, and they don't hide their flaws. They don't hide it, not one bit, and the producers of Power and The Wire, or even Empire, they don't care about trying to change white perception of black people and black families and trying to prove to Whitey that we're not like all those other black people. Yeah, those black people are fucked up, but we're not one of them. I'm raising respectable kids. I'm raising nice kids, home-trained conservative kids who are going to get married and have kids. The Wire and Power and Empire is nothing like that. Not even Tyler Perry's Meet the Browns, which I can understand why some people believe that it's a minstrel show. Okay, I get that. I'm not going to disagree with that. One reason why you have a lot of certain types of blacks who beg for white acceptance is because for a long time white people believed that quote in that movie The Godfather, where the mafia boss was talking about dealing drugs, and he stood up and he said, yeah, they're animals anyway, let them lose their souls. So now you have a certain segment of black people who want to prove to white people, hey, yeah, those black people are animals, but I'm not one of them. But as I mentioned before, today's generation of young blacks don't care about that, which to me is progress. Like Miles Davis said in his autobiography, Miles Davis was in an episode of Miami Vice where he played as a drug dealer. I never got to see that episode, but Miles Davis said in the autobiography, he was like, you know what, look, black people put on acts every day in America to try to make white people feel comfortable around it, because if white people found out what goes on inside of the personal lives and the minds of black people, it would scare them. And that's where a lot of this black respectability garbage comes from. So you have these respectable, achieving, white-collar, or educated, lame blacks. They want to portray themselves as actors or circus animals, or they portray themselves in a very unhealthy light. Begging for acceptance. Some of y'all call it cooning. And as far as I'm concerned, they're going to be some of the biggest enemies of any real social progress. Just like Captain Save-A-Hose, they're going to mess it up for everybody else. Not long ago, I think this was last year, I was watching an episode of Good Times. I was actually on my way to the gym. It was just happened to be on television. My mom was with me. And then one episode, it was the pool shooting episode where James Evans was about to go and gamble and shoot some pool to pay their rent to prevent themselves from being evicted. And my mother was with me, and she agreed with me. She was like, you know what, Florida Evans, she's responsible for why that family grew up to be a bunch of late bloomers in life. And she's indirectly responsible for why the James Evans character ended up getting killed in that car accident, because she was so obsessed with that morals, do the right thing bullshit. And again, I'm not saying that it's not a good television show. Yes, it was, but I'm just giving you an example of how a television show like that just perpetuates the failure of black respectability and how fucked up patriarchy or even matriarchy really is. And I'm chilling with a friend of mine not long ago, and we were also watching an episode of Good Times, and we both came to this other unpleasant realization. Why is it that you have a television show that shows a black family struggling, and then you want to call a television show like that Good Times? Those are not good times. Those are hard times. Am I the only, it seems like there's not very many people who have a problem with that.